It wasn't a desperate local decision made in the heat of revolutionary chaos. The execution of the Romanovs was a meticulously planned political assassination ordered directly from the highest echelons of Bolshevik power in Moscow. The familiar narrative of the Ural Soviet acting alone, driven by a fear of the approaching White Army, crumbles under the weight of newly declassified archives. This wasn't a spontaneous tragedy, it was a calculated elimination, a chilling act that reveals the true, ruthless nature of the early Soviet state. In the next 13 minutes, you're going to understand precisely how Moscow pulled the strings from afar, exactly which coded messages sealed the imperial family's fate, and why this undeniable evidence reshapes everything you thought you knew about the end of the Romanov dynasty and the very soul of the Russian Revolution. For decades, the story most of us learned began in July of 1918, deep in the Ural Mountains. Tsar Nicholas II, his wife Alexandra, their 4 daughters Olga, Tatiana, Maria, Anastasia, and their ailing son Alexei were held captive in the Ipatiev house in Ekaterinburg. The Russian Civil War raged around them, and the anti-Bolshevik White Army was closing in. The popular narrative, often reinforced by early Soviet accounts and some Western historians, presented a dramatic, immediate threat. The local Ural Soviet, fearing the Romanovs would be rescued and become a rallying point for counter-revolutionaries, supposedly acted decisively. Their leader, Yakov Yurovsky, along with a dozen or so guards, carried out the gruesome deed in the house's cellar. We're told it was a chaotic, brutal affair, a desperate act of self-preservation by a local council pushed to the brink. This version of events emphasized the decentralization of power, the chaos of the Civil War, and painted the execution as a reactive, almost unavoidable tragedy dictated by circumstance rather than a cold, premeditated order. Historians like Pavel Bykov, who wrote one of the earliest official Soviet histories of the execution, certainly perpetuated this local decision-making myth, carefully omitting any direct Moscow involvement to shield the fledgling central government from responsibility. It fit a convenient narrative, the revolutionary masses making their own justice. But beneath this surface, a profound contradiction simmered, an unspoken question about how such a high-stakes decision could truly be left to a regional council without any input from the absolute center of power. The truth, buried under layers of official secrecy and carefully constructed propaganda for over 70 years, is far more chilling and precise. The decision to execute the Romanovs didn't originate with the local Ekaterinburg Soviet. It came from the top, orchestrated by Vladimir Lenin himself, with his trusted lieutenant Yakov Sverdlov acting as the primary conduit. The evidence, unearthed from the presidential archives of the Russian Federation and examined by historians like Edvard Radzinsky and latterly by Russian historian V.M. Krustelev, includes a series of coded telegrams and deciphered instructions that paint an unmistakable picture. Consider the infamous Sverdlov telegram. While initially presented as merely informing Moscow of the execution after it happened, later analysis of its original coded form and subsequent communications reveals a different story entirely. One key piece of this puzzle is the role of Philip Goloshchekin, a member of the Ural Soviet and a close associate of Sverdlov. Goloshchekin traveled to Moscow in early July 1918, specifically to meet with Lenin and Sverdlov. He returned to Ekaterinburg with explicit, though unwritten, instructions. Historians now understand that the formal resolution passed by the Ural Soviet on July 16, 1918, was merely a rubber stamp, legitimizing a decision already made at the highest level. Do you truly believe a local Soviet would dare eliminate the Tsar, a figure of immense symbolic power, without direct, undeniable approval from Lenin himself? Impossible. Documents indicate that Sverdlov maintained a tight grip on all information concerning the imperial family. A telegram sent from Ekaterinburg to Sverdlov on July 17th, just hours after the execution, was not asking for permission, but confirming the completion of an already agreed-upon plan. It referenced a previous arrangement concerning the family. This was not a reactive measure. This was the cold, calculated extermination of a potential political threat, a final severing of Russia's monarchical past, executed with ruthless efficiency under Moscow's specific command. the official announcement of the execution, released by the Council of People's Commissars, only stated that Nicholas II had been executed, conspicuously omitting the rest of the family. This selective disclosure was another layer of control, managing the international and domestic fallout, another hallmark of a centralized directive, not local panic. The implications of this revelation run deep, touching not just the fate of one family, but the very character of the Russian Revolution itself. This wasn't merely about preventing the White Army from rescuing the Tsar. It was about destroying the idea of monarchy, severing Russia's historical ties to its imperial past with an act of chilling finality. The Bolsheviks understood that even a dead Tsar could be a symbol, but a missing Tsar, or one whose fate was ambiguous, was far more dangerous. The secret burial, the decades of denial, the deliberate obfuscation by the Soviet state about the remains of the imperial family for so long, all of it reinforces the profound, calculated nature of the execution. They needed not just to kill the monarch, but to erase him from public memory, to deny his very existence for a new, revolutionary future. This was a statement, this was a warning. It told everyone, both inside Russia and across the globe, that the Bolsheviks were utterly serious, utterly ruthless, and that there would be no turning back, no restoration. It defined the early Soviet regime as one willing to take extreme measures to secure its power, laying a foundation of fear and absolute control that would characterize the next 70 years of Russian history. The detailed forensic work by teams in the 1990s, identifying the remains through DNA analysis and confirming the site of their hidden graves in the Koptyaki forest, ultimately gave undeniable physical proof to a crime that the Soviet state tried desperately to keep buried. This act, sanctioned from Moscow, serves as a stark reminder of how political expediency can swiftly override any moral consideration in the forging of a new world order. You now see the end of the Romanovs not as a tragic footnote born of civil war anarchy, but as a deliberate, foundational act of the Bolshevik government. This isn't just about the execution itself, it's about understanding the core machinery of the early Soviet state, a power structure built on centralized control, political pragmatism, and a terrifying willingness to erase those who stood in the way of their vision. The Russian Revolution was not merely a popular uprising. It was a brutal consolidation of power, meticulously engineered from the very top. The archives whisper truths the official histories never dared to speak, and there are so many more of those whispers waiting to be heard, ready to shatter other long-held assumptions.